Here we go. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Welcome back. You have my boy, Mr. Bass over here. Hello. How are you, sir?
What up, Steve?
Let me just say
How you
first and
doing?
foremost, congratulations. And hey, you know this. Congratulations on 3K. Hold on.
Ah! Hey,
3,000.
right on, right
Look
on.
at you, man. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Feels good. Anytime you hit a milestone,
Yeah.
something to be happy about.
We have tonight we're going to talk Bassmaster Classic. Hopefully sometime in the near future our boy Ken Duke will come on here and we will just rush him with all sorts of questions. And of course, if you want to tell us who your top 5 people you think are going to do, send them in the comments. I'll put them up. We'll read them. If you have a question for us or you have a question for Ken, this would be when Ken does get on, this will be a great time for you to just ask away. Now, let's hope we had talked yesterday or texted yesterday that Ken is actually going. He's in Fort Worth tonight. He's going to cover it for Fishing Tackle Retailer, so it should be a lot of fun. My question right off the bat: what's going to go on with the channel this week? Because I need to know. What videos are you working on?
Well, it is unboxing monthly tackle box subscription week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is the week they all pour in. So I'm going to be breaking down and going through all those. And I get a lot of those. And guess what? I got a bento box for the very first time.
What is
The
a bento
JDM,
box?
it is the JDM bento box from the Hookup Tackle.
Okay.
It is very unique colors of some specific JDM products. The Hookup Tackle has a relationship with Megabass. So often it's Megabass lures like a Vision 110 or some of their other lures. And the interesting thing about this is they're they try to make them very unique and special colors, and they don't give you any discounts on the price. So what they claim is they give you $100 worth of premium JDM lure, and that's what they charge you, $100 a month.
Have you opened this box up yet?
Yeah, I opened it.
And are you excited about it? I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but now you got me questioning everything.
I don't know if I'm excited about it or not, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And I usually run into this with most of these subscriptions. Oftentimes, the first one is a little anticlimactic, and it takes a few to finally make your mind up on whether you feel like it's worth it or not. You can definitely, hey, we all know that a Megabass Vision 110 jerkbait is a $25 value.
Yeah, it's a badass lure.
And so, yeah, that's what they charged me for that one lure. That's part of the box, So I can't be disappointed that I paid $25 for Megabass because that's what they cost.
Yeah.
And the color is super sick. So I'm really happy about that too. But
cool.
As we've talked about on these boxes, there's always this question of, is it really worth what you're forking out every month?
Yeah.
And so we'll see. Those are super, super hard to get. I can't believe I got one. So, yep, I'm going to be doing that, rolling that one out this week, as well as a bunch of others. And then I've got a couple of fishing videos that I'm going to publish. I've got one that I've done for a Monster Bass channel, and I'm going to be putting up sending it in this week. What are you doing? What's going on your channel this week?
I don't even know, to be honest. I don't know which one's next in the list of stuff I've already finished. I think there's probably one. I probably will put one up of like 3 days of fishing with Topwater Johnny, 3 mornings of fishing with Topwater Johnny. So, and that has that one that's swing and miss and super slow motion, so you can see the size of the bass that just just didn't work out, and so, and there's a lot, I think there's a lot of little fish in there too. So I was going to make separate days, but then I'm like, hell with it. I'm just going to make it into one longer video. It only made more sense to me.
Yeah. So what do you think? I'd be interested to see in the comments if any what the opinion of our viewers is that, there's a ton of guys out there doing fishing videos now. What's interesting? What is it that guys like to see? What when it comes to a fishing video, are you guys just done with those, tired of those, or do you love them? Is there something you'd like to see that interests you? I've been asking myself, and I don't know if you have too, Steve, how can I make it different? Rather than just going out and catching fish just like everybody else does. And I don't know if I have an answer.
So with me, I've always tried to do at least 2 different camera views. There's always a camera on my head, and there's usually a camera behind me. And recently, I've thrown up the drone at the same time. So the problem with that is that you are in control of all 3 of those cameras. So when you move, you have to walk your sorry happy butt back to where you started and move that one camera that's stationary. And then you still have to worry about the drone dropping in the water at any point in time.
I know
and when the wind gets bad, the drone doesn't fly as long as it should, and then you got to worry about, like, for me, brutally honest, I've hit enough drones and I've crashed. So Sonia's in the other room, so I'm going to be very quiet when I say this. I've lost 3 drones in 2 years. So,
well, I know that feeling. I haven't lost a drone yet, but it's impossible not to crash your drone. And I've crashed mine multiple times, and it's not easy to protect those things, and they're pricey.
Yeah. I mean, I started off with a drone that was like, we have iCast in like 4 or 5 or 6 weeks, and quite honestly, this whole week has been complete iCast for me. I mean, from top to bottom, all I'm doing is iCast stuff for people. So, like a few years ago, I had this, I'm going to do something nobody's ever seen in their life at iCast. And it's iCast on the water morning, and I set the drone out, and there were all these booths outside of the Orlando Convention Center. And I went by them at like 3 feet high, and just everyone didn't even know I was there. And then I jolted it up to like 50 feet and went over top of everybody. And Mike Iaconelli and Edwin Evers are out there, and they're waving to me. It's like brilliant. It's beautiful. It's the greatest. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to become a professional video person. This is Spielberg kind of stuff I'm doing right now. And out of nowhere, this big giant, like 40, 50 wind burst just picks up my drone and just shoots it. I mean, it doesn't even show up on your phone. It's so far away from me. And I'm like, trying to get it back, and I'm like, where is it? And then I'm thinking, well, I'll land it near something I can, like, something I know where it is, like a landmark.
Yeah.
Never, ever, 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 ever found it. Still don't know where it is to this date. Didn't have a clue with it, and that's when I was like, okay, I need to rethink this whole drone thing if I really need to be in the drone business. So Eric answered our question. Eric said, I would like to have I would have to say great information, like explain what you're using, how you're retrieving the lure, also genuine fishing days, not videos of just catch after catch or showing big fish. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah. I'll be honest. I catch a lot of small fish. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, I catch my fair share of small fish as well, and I try to mix them in some, but there comes and I have done that. I've had days where I've caught like 30 little fish, and I've done a video catching 30 little fish. But after
Yeah.
a while, it can get a little dull.
I try to explain to what I'm doing when I'm doing it. I'll be honest though, it's really awkward. And I don't know if you have this problem. It's really awkward for me to just sit and talk to a camera and blah 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 while I'm fishing, because I'm thinking to myself, I hope nobody's watching me, because this would look like the most retarded thing you've ever seen. And it's one of those things that I'm like, I'm unbelievably self-conscious as is. But I go do interviews and all these other things, and then I'm really overly self-conscious. So
yeah, I hear you. I don't have a problem talking to the camera though. It doesn't bother me a whole lot, but it is easy to go long periods of time without talking, and then
Yeah.
you realize, wow, I've got to make that more interesting.
yes, I find myself when I'm out doing videos that I need to pretend like there's somebody next to me and that doesn't know what I'm doing. So I go, oh, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm bouncing the worm. This is the action I want the worm to do. And then at the same time, I'm going to hit this spot and I'm going to hit this spot. Or like in the video that I have, I talk about on the way around, I'm going to use one lure. And when I get to that very back edge, I'm going to use a worm all the way back, because
Yeah, I've seen you do that.
yeah, that's just, it's almost like my thought process. So
One thing I've started doing that helps is, because I use the GoPros as well,
yeah,
and I do one on my hat. I used to do the chesty, and the chesty, your hands and everything is just always in the way of the shot.
yeah,
So I use one on my hat, and then I use one on my boat, one or two on my boat, depending upon which. But I've started using the voice commands, and it's a little jinky, but it actually works quite well.
okay. We need to say hello because he's in here. I don't know if this is gonna work. Guest to add.
Oh, yeah, there he is.
Ken, I'll be honest. I don't know if there's a way in hell that I'm gonna get you and me in the right position. Oh, hold on, I'm not moving anything.
Woo!
Let me first give an introduction. By the way, Ken, Mr. Bass, Ken, introduction.
Hello, Mr. Bass.
Great to meet you, Mr. Ken Duke. I am very honored.
So here with us,
Why is that?
because he's a fan. I've been telling him not to be a fan.
I'm a huge fanboy. You just blow me away. This last podcast you did on BTL, it was a masterpiece. I was driving, and I don't know how many times I came close to running over somebody. You just had me fixated to that show. It was just absolutely incredible. And I'm thinking to myself, I've got to hear that info on the world record bass. He's putting these carrots out there, and he's not giving me the full deal here.
Mr.
boy,
Bass, Mr. Bass.
That was a great show. Great show.
I'm gonna drop some bombs when Mark Jeffries and I finally do that. I'm honored to be
wait
on
to
with
watch
you,
that
sir.
show.
Absolutely honored.
We have a little bit of spotty internet, but let me first.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
That's all right. Let me introduce you properly.
Uh-oh.
He is currently the main man at Fishing Tackle Retailer. He was editor of the Bassmaster magazine for how many years? 10, 15?
Oh, I was a senior editor, yeah, for way too long. Way too long.
He not only is one of my closest friends, we have way too many stories that we could tell about each other. I call him
prison.
We could be in a lot of trouble. I call him cousin Kenneth Allen Duke. He calls me cousin Stephen Allen Chapman. But he is a very good friend, and I'm very happy to have him on here. Ken Duke, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, guys. It's a thrill to be on the show, and I'm here in Fort Worth, Texas, as a matter of fact. Just got in, and of course, the gigantic news is they're going to have to cancel the Classic because Steve Chapman is not there.
I'm not there because of Dave Mercer.
Hey, there's a lot of guys who don't want to be in the same town as Dave Mercer, but they're still going to have a Classic.
They are. So you got in. Can you give me a view of what's going on in the room just real fast? Please.
This is the Aloft Hotel here in downtown Fort Worth.
Oh, it looks nice, dude.
Modern-looking hotel.
Didn't you stay in one of those a few years back?
I did. I stayed in one in...
Because you asked me to stay with you.
The class was in Tulsa back in 2016 when our buddy Edwin Evers won.
Mm-hmm.
And that was... I'm looking forward to seeing Edwin on Saturday, by the way. The MLF guys are going to filter in as they can, is what some of them have told me, Mr. Bass. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of my ex-buddies who used to fish the elites.
And
they're still my buddies, but they're ex-elite anglers.
And
right on.
And Kevin Van Dam won today, by the way. KVD won.
I didn't even know that. You guys are filling me in because I've been on planes all day.
Yeah, he won. He smashed it today out there. He smashed it. So
he is still amazing.
Still unbelievable. But today we want to talk about Classic. We want to do odds. I want to. We have our annual bet. You know what our bet is. Your 5, my 5. Mr. Bass is getting in on this dollar bet too.
I like it. I like it.
All right.
More the merrier. The more people we have, that improves my chances of not being dead last. So that's all I'm hoping for is somebody's pulling up the rear other than me. All right, I'm ready to play, gentlemen.
Okay, good. And I've got people's comments. If you guys want that are on the chat, you want to tell me who your top 5 guys are, make sure you do that. Make sure you go to Mr. Bass's channel, thumbs up and subscribe and do all that. I'd
like to throw out a question real quick.
I would like you to throw out some questions, not to me, to Ken.
Okay,
Kenneth, please.
This is just one question that I think needs to be asked, even though we pretty much all know the answer to it. And that is, especially with all the changes that have gone on in professional fishing over the last 3 years, is the Bassmaster Classic still the penultimate mega Super Bowl fishing tournament of the world? Or is there
it is. Yeah, Mr.
competing?
Bass, I think it is. I think it's still the top dog because, for a variety of reasons, MLF has not been able to get the red crest where they want. They had a great tournament the first time around in 2019 that Edwin Evers won. But then, of course, they didn't have one in 2020. And the one they had in 2021, they weren't able to pull off the expo element. And then they struggled with some other things. So, yeah, the Classic is still the big dog. The Classic is still the one with some significant live television coverage and so on. The Classic is still the one that carries the value in terms of sponsorship dollars after the fact. Every appearance dollars after the fact. Incentive Classic is still the Mac Daddy in the world of bass tournaments. But
how did the Forest Wood Cup came to really competing with the Classic back in its heyday?
In my opinion, the Classic was that tournament that you could always recall the winner. You'd say, "Oh, I know who won the Classic last year." But
yeah,
boy, it was hard to come up with who won FLW Wood Cup, and it's hard to come up sometimes with who won the Red Crest. So I think the Classic is still the deal, and honestly, in conversations I've had with the MLF guys, they know the Classic is a big deal. Their plan, of course, is to own and run the sport. They would like to either buy bass or put them under. And one of the things they would do if they bought them is they would still have a Bassmaster Classic, but it would be, of course, the the MLF Classic at that point, MLF Bassmaster Classic.
Right.
Do you think
Well,
there's? Go ahead, dude.
I was just going to say, I totally agree with you. I still feel like the Bassmaster Classic is it. And it's one of the things that causes me the greatest pain about the switch with all the elite anglers going to MLF is, like you were mentioning, KVD is never going to fish a classic again. To me, that's heart-wrenching, you know.
It is. Gary Klein is not going to have any more chances to catch Rick Clunn's record of 32. Edwin Evers, Edwin had won 11 BASS events. I guess he'll never win another BASS event. He was running into some pretty rare company with guys like Nixon and Clunn and Brower getting up in the teens, and that's not going to increase. And those things are kind of sad. And to me, what's even a bigger deal about it, Mr. Bass, is that these guys just didn't change leagues, in my opinion. On some level, they changed sports.
Mm-hmm.
What they're doing is fascinating to me. I love watching it. I love the drama, but it's a different game, and it's hard to compare those apples to oranges.
Very fascinating.
Do you think? Now, Ken and I have talked about this probably a million times, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, dude. But do you think there'll ever be a time where Boyd and Gary can get with the owners of Bass and make it work so that there's one uniform league again? Or do you still think? I think I know the answer here, but are they so far apart that they're just never gonna ever see eye to eye?
Is that for me or Mr. Bass?
That's for you.
Okay. No, there's not a chance in hell that will ever happen. And of course, the reason is that each of those organizations is bound and determined to run the other one out of business.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like, and I've used this analogy before, but when here's the pie of the bass fishing world, and when MLF came on the scene, they didn't increase the pie any. They just threw another fork on the table.
Yeah.
And the goal here now is just to own as much of that pie as you possibly can. And that pie is things like sponsorship dollars and viewership eyeballs and things like angler profiles and things like that. So no, the goal is to drive the other guy out of business. Bass and FLW, in my opinion, either one of them would be stupid to agree to some sort of competition where they're all working together. That's not going to happen. My buddy Mark Jeffries, that Mr. Bass was talking about earlier over on Bass Talk Live,
PTL.
He has this idea for this tournament of champions, and I love Mark Jeffries. He's a wonderful guy, and I'm looking forward to seeing him hopefully tomorrow. But that's the craziest idea I've ever heard.
You and I talked about that years ago.
Yeah, he's really into that though. He's talked about it on multiple shows, and he was really adamant with you. And I really liked hearing your perspective on it, because it really makes sense that the odds are it's just never going to happen. But I do agree with him; it would be just incredible to have a true tournament of champions. But that's what he's talking about is a BASS like that. It doesn't make any sense really.
Guys, Mr. Bass, I'm sorry to jump in here. I got frozen out there for a second, and I missed. You were at what you talked about, how it would be cool if they ever worked together, and then I lost you.
Okay, what I was saying is it would really be awesome to see them work together, but a BASS tournament of champions is really just that. It's a Bassmaster tournament, and how do you get MLF interested in that? I don't see. Well, you mentioned it multiple times. Really, what's in it for them? And I don't see anything that's in it for them. But from a fan's perspective, we would love to see that.
Well, interesting you should mention that. And here's a concept that I came up with, I don't know, in the early days of MLF, and it became much more interesting or compelling after those 68 guys left Bass to join MLF. And I don't even think I've talked to Steve about this, but I thought What we need to do is have a true tournament of champions and have it at ICAST when a lot of the pros are going to be in Florida anyway.
Yeah.
Have it on the Kissimmee chain every year. Invite everybody. But here's the key to it, Mr. Bass, and this is the only way it works. An independent third party runs it. And you'd have to have enough money and prize money to get these guys to say, well, I love MLF and I love Bass, but I'm still going to fish this tournament of champions because there's $500,000 or $1 million at stake.
Yeah.
And I even talked to a few sponsors about it, and I said, hey, if I try to put something like this together, can I count on your support? And a lot of them said, yeah, we're with you. If you can do that and set that up, we'll be one of the players. But I just didn't have the time and perhaps the energy to try to pull it off. But I think that's a scenario where you could have a true tournament of champions where it's a truly independent third party setting it up. And they'd have to have enough money, guys. That's the key. You'd have to have enough money that everybody would throw a little bit of loyalty to the wind.
It would be interesting. I mean, you'd have to have a lot of money. Because you and I have talked about this in depth. I'm surprised to hear that. Well, I'm not surprised Edwin's going because Edwin's a good dude. But I wonder how many MLF guys are going to go to the Classic because that actually helps the Classic with name recognition in somewhat.
Well, it does, but I'll throw a scary couple of numbers at you guys here. A few years ago, Zebco Quantum polled the attendees at the Classic.
Oh, I know this. We've talked about this.
And they found out some things that were not very surprising. They found out some things that were surprising. The thing they found out that was not very surprising is that Bill Dance is the most recognizable angler out there. 80% of the people who walked through the door knew who Bill Dance was. Then you drop down to around the 50% mark, and that's where Hank Parker, Jimmy Houston, those guys are, Roland Martin, the guys who've been on TV for decades. Then you get down to 25%, and that's Kevin Van Dam. Then you get down to 10%, and that's Mike Iaconelli. And then you get down to the guy who at that time had just won back-to-back classics, Jordan Lee. He was at something less than 2%. And these are the people walking on the show floor of the Bassmaster Classic Expo. So, we'll say, it really helps Bass when, Randy Howell and Brent Chapman show up. Well, not so much.
Yeah.
But what it does help is it helps the sponsors. And that's why these guys are going to show up. Now, there are a lot of people out there who think that MLF scheduled an event to be up against the Classic to make this difficult. Well, no. Bass moved the Classic from its original date back in March to these dates here in June. And that's why a lot of these guys are having conflicts. So what's happening is these guys are coming in usually for one day. I talked to Kevin Van Dam recently. He'll be here Friday. I talked to Edwin Evers. He'll be here Saturday. And it's going to be like...
Keep going.
Uh-oh.
We can hear you.
I can. Okay, cool. Well, that was really all I had. I'm blathering on. You guys need to talk more, and I need to talk less.
Oh no, we got lots of questions. Yeah, Mr. Bass has lots of questions. You and I talk all the time, so yep. I ask. I call you when I'm in the middle of traffic for 5 hours and doing that kind of stuff.
Steve's got a Bass Pro lifestyle and doesn't even realize it. He calls me at windshield time, and he's afraid of falling asleep.
Yeah, I have done this. Okay, now this is a question.
You and half the pro tour have called me. Some guys call me at like 11 or 12 o'clock.
Yeah, but usually you and I spend a lot of time on the phone when we talk.
We do. That's problematic.
Yeah.
My wives think there's something going on.
Just out of curiosity, I didn't even ask how is the wife and how is mom? I mean, don't go into too much.
my wife is doing great. My mom she's got her struggles. She's 90 years old, recently broke her hip. She has some serious mental, you know, memory loss issues. And so it has changed my life.
Yeah.
I really had a chance to go fishing in the last 3 months.
I'm always saying, well, no, I think you went fishing with somebody.
Well, okay.
You went.
I have gone fishing a couple times.
Yes.
But those were work, Steve. Work.
Yeah. Those work. Mr. Bass, we want those days of work, by the way.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's work fishing when I fish with Shaw Grigsby and
I
Greg
know.
Hackney, Billy McDonald, and Edwin Evers. And
Yes.
Gary. That's work.
I was on the phone with you during Edwin Evers.
I'm not having any fun when I do that, for the record.
Okay, I have a question
Just
for you.
random.
Yeah, just name dropping. A few weeks.
Yeah, that's what I do.
A few
Steve
weeks.
Chapman.
Yeah. A few weeks ago, Mr. Bass and I had this is completely off classic. Who are the top 10 anglers of all time?
I
Now,
like it.
we talked about this for 2 hours. We had ups and downs. Everyone gave their ideas. But I would love to hear cousin Kenneth Allen Duke's kind of sort of remote top 10.
Yeah.
And then your Mount Rushmore too.
My Mount Rushmore of professional tournament anglers, or my Mount Rushmore of bass fishing?
Professional bass tournament fishermen. So you can throw in Dance and those guys into the older generation that we love in there.
Okay. I've got my Mount Rushmore is easy. My Mount Rushmore is easy. Let me give you my Mount Rushmore first.
Okay.
And it's kind of in no particular order.
Yes, of course.
It is Kevin Van Dam, Bill Dance, Roland Martin, and Rick Clunn.
And Rick Clunn.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's very logical.
Here's a question.
And right behind those guys, you've got guys like Larry Nixon, Gary Klein, Hank Parker, Aaron Martins, Mark Davis, Edwin Evers.
See, I told you.
Yep.
But I haven't had a chance to really sit down and think about it at great length. So,
does Jacob Wheeler make it in the top 10 right now? Really? Shut up.
Of course not.
Really?
How many Bassmaster Classics has he? How many Bassmaster Classics or Red Crest has he even qualified for? Not that many. I will say this about Wheeler, and it's interesting. I don't mean to keep bringing up Bass Talk Live, but Mark Jeffries and I had a similar conversation about Bass Talk Live, and it's my opinion that to the age of 30, Wheeler's accomplishments are perhaps every bit the equal of Kevin Van Dam.
Yeah, you and I talked. We've went into.
Yeah, we said the same thing about that as well.
Yeah, but what Wheeler hasn't done is he hasn't won Angler of the Year anywhere. Not anywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
And to me, that's far more prestigious.
Yeah.
By the time Van Dam was 30, he had knocked down a couple. And because he had won in 92, 96, and 2 before he was 30. And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
He won when he was 24.
Yeah.
So Ken, one of the arguments is, we've heard this a lot when it comes to the Roland Martins of the world, and that is, it's a totally different game now than it was then. And when we talk about Jacob Wheeler, that's one of the things I hear from guys who say Jacob Wheeler is definitely one of the best fishermen ever. Because it's so different. The electronics and all of the things that the anglers, the new tools that they have, and I've heard this argument over and over again that in today's fishing environment, could the old timers really hang with the Jacob Wheelers of the world? What say you?
I say they absolutely would have hung with the Jacob Wheelers of the world, because this electronic stuff is a shortcut, and Wheeler's a master, and Wheeler is one of the best anglers I've ever seen. I got to spend a day in the boat with Wheeler at Toledo Bend 5 or 6 years ago, and he is as good a mechanical fisherman as I have ever seen. He was putting baits in places I could not have carried them by hand and set them any better than he was casting them. He's remarkable. But the electronics thing is a shortcut. And guys like Roland Martin and Bill Dance were masters of electronics back when it was not easy to read and handle your electronics. I've talked with the guys at Lowrance and Humminbird and Garmin, and they will tell you, the engineers there, they will tell you that the best thing an angler can do when he gets in his boat and turns on his electronics is just set them on auto. I asked them, well, what about the top pros and their fine tuning and stuff like that? And they've all told me most of those guys don't know what they're doing. They'd be better off on auto. And the electronics have just made things easier. They haven't made things rise to a new level. They've just offered these guys some shortcuts, and good for them. That's great. But Roland Martin, Bill Dance, those guys would have been just as competitive if they were 50 years younger today as they were in their heyday, in my opinion.
Yeah, I heard you say something along those lines. I think it was on Bass Talk Live, and it really rang true with me. You said something along the lines that Roland Martin and Bill Dance, if they were young anglers today, were so aggressive and cared so much about winning that they would be all over every new electronic, newfangled tool out there, and they would master it just as good, if not better, than the Wheelers of the world. And so absolutely they could compete. And I think that's important to remember. Yeah. That's a really important thing, because, you know, what is it about mastering electronics? It's really just your drive and your desire to do so. And that's what they've got. In fact, you did an incredible article about Roland Martin. I think, didn't you call him, like, what was the term you called him? It wasn't like the greatest of all time, but it's like the most iconic.
The most dominant.
The most dominant. The most dominant. So
yeah, because
if he came today and started fishing as a young man, he would learn how to dominate today, right?
Well, I don't think there's, well, Mr. Bass, you're opening up a big can of worms here. I like it. I'll say this.
This is going to get you in so much trouble.
No.
I can't wait for this. This is going to, I already know what's going to happen, because we both know these people.
What's going to happen?
No, go ahead. Just go ahead. I already foresee an issue. Gerald Swindle.
Whatever. I'm looking forward to talking to the G-Man this week, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's the deal. And this is just my opinion, Mr. Bass, but I believe I can show numbers that back it up. When we're talking about BASS right after Ray Scott got it rolling in 67, 68, 69, 70, when Bill Dance went out and won 8 of the first 24 tournaments, when Roland Martin put 3 seasons in and posted an average finish of being in the top 3, back then the sport was kind of in its infancy, if you will. Mm-hmm. There were guys who were spectacularly good, and there were guys who were spectacularly, they were all in the same field. So when Roland Martin would launch in a field of 300 anglers, there might only be 20 guys there who were any damn good at all. Today, when a field of 100 anglers launches, 70 of them are probably good, maybe 75. Mm-hmm. So what we're seeing is not that the top has gotten higher, but the bottom has gone a lot and closed the gap. So do I believe that, first of all, Roland was hands down the most dominant angler in professional angling history. And it bugs me when people say, oh, Kevin Van Dam is the most dominating angler in history, the apex predator. Well, that just shows you don't know what you're talking about when people say stuff like that. Roland Martin was hands down the most dominant angler in pro fishing history. Would he dominate like that if he were 30 years old and learning the electronics? No, he would not, because the playing field has leveled significantly. The playing field is leveled significantly because of all these guys have a ton of time on the water. All these guys have largely the same sophisticated electronics. All these guys have access to the same equipment. And so that's leveled that playing field. And so there would not be that kind of domination today. And you don't see that kind of domination today. Even when Van Dam was at his peak in 2008, 9, 10, 11, he didn't dominate the way Roland Martin dominated.
Yeah.
It's fun to wonder about, and that's really all it is. It's just something fun to talk about.
It's a blast to talk about. I love talking about. And I'm looking at the comments here. Somebody said, well, he won an FLW Wood Cup. He never won Angler of the Year. And there's a guy on here, Matthew Acevedo, who's talking about baits dominating. Well, guys like Roland Martin and Bill Dance back in the day, they didn't dominate with an individual bait. The only time in the sport's history really where a guy dominated with a bait was probably Dave Glebe and Roland Martin in the late 70s and early 80s. They dominated because they were among a very small group of anglers who knew the flipping concept.
Right.
And that helped them dominate for a short period of time until everybody else learned it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we want to talk about the Bassmaster Classic, but if you want to ask Ken a question, put it on the text or the chat thing over here, and I'll put it up and we'll ask him for sure. Can you tell everybody since you've been going to the classics for so long, can you tell everybody what it takes for like a city to host the classic and what it means to that host city to start off with?
Okay. Number one, you need a fishery.
Yeah. Somewhere close.
Well, that close has become a term of art.
I know.
In the last 10 years. But let's say it's an hour to an hour and a half away at the outside.
Yeah.
Number two, you need to pony up some money. Let's say somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million. Number three, you need an expo venue so they can put on the Bassmaster Classic Expo, which will bring in, let's say, 100 to maybe 150,000 people. Four, you need a well-coordinated Chamber of Commerce and Convention and Visitors Bureau who are ready to work with the Bass staff and make sure that all these moving parts are going to work properly together so that this thing can come off relatively without a hitch, so that guys like Steve Chapman don't show up on snow days dressed in shorts and T-shirts.
They lost my luggage, dude. Mr. Bass asked me, was that the first time you and I met? Or we met before that, didn't we? No. Oh God, that is the
first
worst.
time I saw Steve Chapman. He's wearing shorts and a T-shirt in a snowstorm.
This is a complete 100% true.
First thing that went in my mind at that point, Mr. Bass, was, do I help this guy or do I let Darwin do his thing?
Oh man,
that's
for sure.
Was that Tulsa?
That was Tulsa, 2013. I come down from my room in the hotel. I don't even remember what hotel it was. I was Bass staff at that time.
Yeah.
And I'm coming off the elevator, and they're in the lobby, and I've been watching it snow outside the window all morning, and I don't even know where I was going. But there are these guys standing there in the lobby, and one of them is dressed in a T-shirt and shorts, and I'm thinking, okay, this is not a bright man.
This is not a bright man.
How do I quietly escape this guy?
So there's a little backstory. Mike and I, there's the three of us. It's Boudreaux, Mike, and I. Boudreaux decides he wants to go to Tulsa like a week early. Makes no sense. Who knows? Mike and I make arrangements to come in on. So there's usually a couple days of practice, and then 2 days before the classic starts, there's a fully great media day, and that's the day Mike and I.
one day before the Classic
Is
starts.
it's okay, one day. So Mike and I decide, we decide we're going to get up there Wednesday night, and we'll be ready. We'll sleep, and we'll get up. We'll go to media day, and that's what we're going to do. So we get on the plane, get to from Florida to Texas, and they decide they're canceling our flight from Texas to Tulsa. So Mike and I go. They say, "Well, you have to spend the night here," and we're like, "We can't. We have media day tomorrow." We go to every car rental place and can't find a car to rent. There's none. A guy hears us and says, "Look, I'm in the same predicament as you guys. Do you want to share gasoline stuff and drive with me in this minivan overnight and go to Tulsa?" Now,
was it Steve Martin or was it John Keane?
All Mike and I can think of doing is, as soon as we race to this car, I want to be in the back seat. Mike pushes me out of the way, steals the back seat. I have to sit up front with this guy. The whole time I'm texting, "We're going to die tonight. This is it. This guy's got to be a serial killer." And he's driving like, there's no exaggeration here. He's driving like 150 miles per hour in this minivan. Did
the car have a number on it?
He had sponsorships, things all over. No, he didn't.
Was he making a lot of left turns?
So we make it from whatever place in Texas to Tulsa. It's supposed to be a 6-hour drive. We made it 3 hours and 17 minutes.
Holy cow.
Show up, then we realize we have to go get our luggage. Mike and I go to the airport in the morning at 6 o'clock. Of course, they have Mike's luggage, but they don't have mine. And it's downpouring in snow. It's just a blizzard out. And by the way, Aaron Martins is running a 5-mile thing in front of us. And I'm like, Aaron. And he's like, "Gotta run, Steve, gotta run," in the snow. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Get to the media event and find out the media event is being held outside in the snow.
Yeah, not a lot of great decision making on media day at that point.
And that's I didn't know that was. I thought we met before that, but obviously we didn't. Okay, so
no, that was the first time, Mr. Bass, that I ever met the illustrious Steve Chapman.
Matthew says
you're still friends.
Pinball 2000.
I took pity on them. And first thing I ever said to Steve was probably some of the best advice he ever heard. I said, "It's cold out there."
Oh man,
that was the start. Ever since then, he's hated himself from being introduced to the crap I put him through.
No, so many of my great classic memories, you'd think they'd be all about Rick Clunn or Aaron or Edwin or Kevin, but no, they're about Steve Chapman thinking he's going to get in the boat with Casey Ashley.
Oh God, you're killing me, man! You're killing me. That story, that one still hurts. That story hurts still to this day.
No, I don't know that one.
Oh, go ahead. Just do it. Just rip the Band-Aid off.
All right, here we go. Mr. Bass, I'm sure you're aware of how these broadcasts about guys who are expected to do well. Here in Fort Worth on Ray Roberts, you're expecting some of the Texas guys to do well, maybe a Chris Zaldane or somebody. So what happens is the television folks, they've got a limited number of cameras. Maybe they got 8 cameras, 10 cameras, whatever it is. And so they try to put it in the boats with the guys who are going to have the best chance to do well, or the guys who are going to be the best story. This would have been
Makes
in
sense.
2000. This would have been what, 2015
Hartwell.
in Lake Hartwell in Greenville, South Carolina, and that's Casey Ashley's home lake. He spends a lot of time out there. He knows it like the back of his hand.
Sure.
And one day, Steve calls me up. This is well in advance of the Classic, a month or more in front of the Classic. And he calls me up and he says, I got Casey Ashley on day one. I'm going to be in the boat with Casey Ashley on day one. I said, no, you're not. No, you're not. And he said, yes, I am. I talked to the media director and I'm in the boat with Casey. Day one, it's me in the boat with Casey. I said, no, you're wrong. You're mistaken. I don't care what they told you. I don't care what you've been led to believe. I don't care who said it. You're not going to be in the boat with Casey Ashley. I'll show you, dude. I'll show you.
It was, I'll show you, dude. For sure. That's exact words.
So then we'd talk. We wouldn't talk about that because I knew that was a sore subject. A couple weeks later, I'm still in the boat with Casey.
Yep.
Still got Casey. I checked. I'm still in the boat with Casey on day one. I said, no, you're not. Not a chance in hell. I said, if you got a better chance of winning the lottery. Now it's getting close. It's getting close, but Mr. Bass, I am no less confident.
Now he's poking the bear, by the way. He's texting me 2 or 3 days before the Classic while we're at Media Day. He's telling me it's not happening, Steve. Mention that, please.
I'm texting him. I'm antagonizing him. I'm being mean and awful. I'm a horrible friend. And this is Media Day. This is the day before he's supposed to get in the boat with Casey Ashley. He's going to get in the boat with Casey Ashley, the guy who everybody picks to win and who ultimately, in fact, does win. So it would have been a major coup to be the media guy in the boat with Casey Ashley. So he gets through Media Day. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be in the boat with Casey Ashley. Ha! I told you. I showed you, Mr. Classic expert. And I said, you're not going to be in the boat with Casey Ashley. You're not. I said, you need to prepare yourself for heartbreak now. Ashley. So, Steve, I'm going to let you take it from here.
So we go through Media Day. It's nonstop harassment. I am all over him. I see Casey. I'm like, dude, I'm on the boat with you. Should I bring anything? Do you need anything? Go through all this stuff. Casey's my number one guy. That's the number one guy I wanted to be with. That's who I'm with. Like the year before, the number one guy was Jason Christie, and I got Jason Christie, which is another story. So we get to the back to where all the media and the anglers all stay in the same hotel, pretty much, most of the time. I think we had dinner that night, maybe. Did we go to dinner that night?
We might have. This was, it was well after dinner when it happened. I think you and Mike were driving.
Yeah, we're driving, and my phone lights up, and it says, whatever her name was, Bass, is calling. So I'm like, oh, okay, she must just be. It's like 10 o'clock, by the way. Mike, we've been partying with these anglers, spending way too much money, and I answer the phone, and I'm like, hey, hi, this is Steve. She's like, we've decided to put a cameraman in, and all I went was, Ken Duke did this to me. I had a tear come down my eye, just one tear. I'm like, Mike's next to me, and he goes, I knew Ken was right as soon as he told you that. So they switched me, and then they're like, well, who is your second person? And I'm like, I don't even remember, because you give them 5 people that you want to go with. I don't even remember who the 5 people I wanted to go with was. So
I picked Casey Ashley 5 times.
I probably did. and I think she said to me, "Aren't you good friends with Brandon Palaniuk?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I could go with Brandon." And she's like,
"It was more like this. It was like I could go with Brandon.
Please let me go with Casey." And I ended up getting. He was 100% right, and it just was. Oh, and I remember, I remember getting up the next morning, and I was just, every curse word was Ken Duke. Ken Duke did this to me. This is he didn't like getting beat at Lake X. This is just his way of getting back at me. I should have never yelled at him with Bill Danseth on the boat and all these things. And then, of course, Ken didn't have anything to do, but it just made the story even more fun. And I think I remember calling you, and you were like, I told you so. That was it.
Yeah, you called me right after that, still in tears.
Yeah.
Mr. Bass, I just felt like we needed to tell that story since you had not heard it.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of the folks watching have heard that story. But, yeah, I still get a chuckle out of it, Steve.
I can imagine.
Yeah, that's an important story that never should be forgotten.
Yeah. Well, every time we see each other, we bring it up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, I want to still go on with this classic because we started talking about what it takes to be a host city. How on average, people don't understand the importance of a classic coming to Fort Worth. How much money it will bring in? Well, pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, a ballpark estimate would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million.
Which is
and
amazing.
These are not BASS numbers, of which, people would have reason to be skeptical. These numbers have been derived by economists, usually from major universities, who go around and study the economic impact of various sporting events. So these are independent economic studies. And you talk about pre-COVID, I think Bass dodged a bullet last year in Birmingham. I think they've probably dodged a bullet again this year.
Really?
I think there are going to be a bunch of mask-free Texans who are eager to get back into the real world and who are serious about their fishing. I'm going to be real surprised if the Expo doesn't do at least 100,000.
You don't think it's going to break? Awesome. You don't think it's going to break? What was that 2 years ago with Ott winning up there?
I don't know. I just don't know. I'm sure it'll keep some people away, but I don't think it's going to keep a lot of people away. And I think it'll crack 100. Will it do 125 or 150? If it does 150, that'll surprise me. But the Classic's never been here. The Classic was in Houston a few years ago, and it didn't do very well there. Mm-hmm. But parking was exorbitant.
Yes. It killed us.
It was not an easy Classic really to attend in a lot of ways. And I'm here at the hotel. I'm at a hotel here in Fort Worth, and I've not been to the venue yet. I don't know how easy it is to park there or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see.
Mr. Bass, do you have a question?
Not really. I when do you want to kind of move into talking about the lake specifically?
Yeah, the lake, Ray Roberts. What can you? I know that it's up 3.5 feet as of right now today. Scott says that.
Yeah, they've had a crazy amount of rain. I was talking to my friend Steve Price, another name-dropping situation there. Steve has covered 41 Classics, I think.
Wow.
And he lives about an hour from here, and he was telling me it rained 2.5 inches in 45 minutes. Just a torrential downpour. So I don't know what that's going to do to the quality of the fishery, to the bite that these guys were on. I know the lake is up high. If the lake is muddy, you got to feel like that's going to maybe hurt any sort of deep water offshore bite. Water's dirty. These fish are likely to move up a little bit shallower maybe. But this time of year, I think ordinarily this could be a wide open Classic. You could see guys doing really well with deep diving crankbaits off ledges. You could see guys. Now you can see guys maybe behind the bushes throwing spinnerbaits and buzzbaits. Who knows? This is wide open, and I'll be curious about the watercolor out there.
Yeah, I was curious about that as well. I was kind of just poking around. That they interviewed quite a few of the anglers as they were coming off of practice, and there seems to be a common theme that you're hearing from the anglers. Obviously the first thing they talk about, the water's high. Another thing that it seemed like a lot of guys said is the fish are scattered. and it seems like it's fishing. The lake is fishing small. I've heard some other people say that this lake fishes small anyway. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with the lake specifically. And almost everyone has mentioned not getting a lot of bites. The bites are really far and few between.
That's interesting. You talk about the fish being scattered. I think that kind of goes with this time of year, maybe. These fish are post-spawn, but maybe they haven't set up in their summertime patterns yet. I can tell you, when I got off the plane and stepped outside here, it is hot. It is humid. It is. I tell people that Lone Star State is not a motto; it's a Yelp rating. That does not make me popular here in Texas, but it's going to be tough out there, maybe. But it'll be real interesting. Somebody's going to figure them out, and it's not unusual for guys to pour mouth at the ramp in practice. That happens a lot. So that doesn't discourage me from how the fishing may be, but with all the rain, if it's discolored the water a lot and so forth, I tend to believe that it's going to be one fairly shallow, less than 5 feet perhaps, and because the Classic is a tough tournament to win in one location, unless you're a nobody. Unless you're a nobody who's not going to pull many boats, not going to have a lot of spectators, and you get off to a big start, maybe put yourself in second or third place, and then have a better day on day 2, then you're going to have to cover a lot of water, because otherwise you're not going to be able to go back to your same water every day unless you're somebody who's not expected to do well.
Yeah.
Talk to us about spectator boats in all the times you've covered the Classic and other elite tournaments and stuff like that. How, even for Kevin Van Dam or somebody, let's just say the leader of day 1, how is that going to affect his fishing for day 2? And is it positive or negative for that person?
Well, it all depends on A, who it is, and B, what he's fishing, where he's fishing. But Kevin Van Dam, not only is he the greatest bass tournament angler of all time, but he handled the crowds at the Bassmaster Classic better than anybody. He knew, because of all his success and popularity, that on day 1, before he had caught a fish in that particular Classic, he was going to have 100 boats behind him. And he knew that he couldn't go back and fish the same water on day 2 or day 3. So he was a master at that, and he game planned for that to a degree that other guys don't have to. If you're some guy coming out of the Bass Nation, you don't have to worry about it. The likelihood is that even your family is not going to follow you on the water.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about that on day 1. Now, if you go out there and you get 35 pounds, you got a 10 pound, 12 pound, 15 pound lead, then you're going to have a crowd on day 2. But that still means you're going to be able to go back to your water. The spectator boats are great. This is public water. Ray Roberts is the Dallas-Fort Worth playground on weekends, and this tournament, 2 of the 3 days are on weekends. So there's going to be a lot of boats out there. The spectator boats that keep their distance and realize these guys are fishing for their livelihood and life-changing money, that's wonderful. It's not great when they push in or they cut a guy off or they run donuts around him, and those things happen. Since we've never seen a Classic, the Dallas crowd shows up and how they comport themselves. Now the anglers won't say this publicly, so I'll say this publicly for them. The worst places for spectator boats are Gunnersville, Kentucky Lake. Mm-hmm. Those are hideous places. Those people many of those people have little respect for the pros, and I'm not a big believer that the pros deserve an inordinate amount of dainty kid glove care. I would just hope that these people would treat them the way they would treat another weekend angler. If you treat them that way, I think that's fair game, and that's just fine.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens quite often, especially on Gunnersville and Kentucky Lake.
Well,
it really does amaze me, though, how, strategically the chase boats, the follow boats, the spectator boats absolutely can impact the outcome of this tournament, at least on some level. And that's one of the things that, kind of makes the KVDs of the world so impressive, is just how well they can handle that pressure and still also compete. It's really impressive.
It is, Mr. Bassett. For a guy like Kevin Van Dam, it didn't just happen at the Classic. It happened at every elite tournament.
Yeah.
He would launch on day one of an elite tournament with 40 or 50 boats on him sometime. It was crazy.
At practice days.
On practice days, he's got crowds. So he was just accustomed to it. That was just an ordinary day on the water for Kevin Van Dam. But for these guys fishing this tournament, well, needless to say, there's nobody in this Classic who has that kind of reputation. I mean, who's the biggest name in this Classic? Is it Brandon Palaniuk? Is it Steve Kennedy? Is it Clark Wendlandt? I mean, whoever it is
that's a great question.
Is a fraction as well known as Kevin Van Dam or a dozen different guys fishing MLF right now. So it's probably Brandon Palaniuk.
Brandon Palaniuk.
Yeah, I think it probably is.
In covering the Classic for so many years, when day one comes through and these guys, like you and I have said this, making the Classic is harder than winning it because there isn't as many people in the field. But when you come in first place, and let's just say it's someone who's not very well known and they have a good day. Let's just for argument's sake, let's just say Keith Carson comes in and he flat out smashes them. He's a buddy too, so that'll help. The media present that happens also at the Classic is something most of these anglers are not ready for. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that, but I don't think the media experience is particularly oppressive or really takes you off your game. Even a very popular angler like a Brandon Palaniuk, he's only going to deal with a dozen different people or so on media day, just because it's a short. It's like 3 hours long, and it's not going to be something that should take him off his preparation. Now, and the ugly thing is for these guys from the Bass Nation, unless one of them is local, and I don't believe any of them are, it may be that no media talks to them at all. Because until they win the tournament or do really, really well in the tournament, they're not a story to most media. So, the complaint that I hear about from guys is always that the pain of the Classic is that it takes them out of their routine. They have to hurry up and get over here and have their picture taken. Then they have to hurry and get over there and wait and do this. And it's just a hassle. It's just a hassle. A lot of hurry up and wait.
There's a lot of, they have what they just finished. Today was their last practice day today, or was it yesterday?
Yes, it was their last plastic day. From now on, they can only use wooden and rubber.
Balsa.
No more plastic.
That's right. No more plastic.
Was today the last practice day, or is it
frozen again?
It's all right. Your sound still comes through.
Yeah, today's the last practice day.
So they have media.
Oh, good. Today's the last practice day. Tomorrow is media day, and of course Friday is day one of competition. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Well, my next question is the last few years, someone who's been local, or it's been their local, kind of sort of their local lake, like Ott and Edwin and maybe Jordan Casey. Jordan Lee wasn't.
Casey, don't forget Casey.
Yeah, I can't remember that one. Do you think
Howell in Alabama.
Howell? Yeah, Howell is a great classic champion, by the way, too.
Yeah,
Do you think having that local
sure.
knowledge is going to be important this week on Ray Roberts?
Absolutely. I think that's always important. Even though that guy who has the most local knowledge does not often win historically, although since 2014 that guy has won quite often. Even though he doesn't often win, he often does well.
Yeah.
And he's often a factor, and he's often in the hunt going into the final day. So yeah, I think there's a certain local factor that helps you, especially, Mr. Bass, we were talking about conditions being so bizarre, lake being up 3.5 feet, all this rain and so forth. I think when you have really unusual circumstances, that makes the local factor even stronger, because the odds are that some of these local guys have seen it under similar conditions. Now, the most local guy, in a sense, may really not be the most local guy. This tournament's being held out of Fort Worth, and Chris Zaldane has a Fort Worth mailing address, but Chris Zaldane's from California, and I don't know how much he's really fished Ray Roberts, and he'll be on a lot of people's fantasy list, but is he really a local?
He came in 9th in the TBBC in 2016.
I wonder how many of these guys have never fished Ray Roberts.
Well, I hope the answer to that is 0, because a lot of these guys have been practicing. But
well, yeah.
But
I guess I'm in a tournament.
I'm just messing with you. Yeah, I bet you most of them had not fished Ray Roberts.
Yeah.
Because Ray Roberts is not a stop on the tournament trail.
Right.
FLW, BASS has never had a tournament here. And it
makes it very interesting.
Plus your history. Yeah, it does make it interesting. And this is Ray Roberts is 29,350 acres, and by big time bass tournament standards, that is a small body of water.
That is a small body.
But what I love about the Classic is you've got a small field. You got 54 guys in this tournament. It's a small field, so you can go someplace like Ray Roberts or a Lay Lake in Alabama, which is only 12,000 acres, and you can have a tournament there and it still be big enough to not be crowded. Now, to Mr. Bass's point earlier, if this place is fishing small, that does not bode well probably for much of anybody.
Have you talked
unless sorry.
Have you talked to any of the anglers yet? I mean, that like any of our friends, and you haven't reached out to any of them yet?
I have not spoken recently to anybody in this Classic.
That's
strange. I know one thing that Stetson Blaylock said when he came off the water, it might have been today, was that he felt like we're all going to be fishing behind each other.
That's discouraging. Okay, if you see me making scratching motions across a piece of paper,
he's not on the list now.
Just ignore me.
You didn't have Stetson Blaylock in there, did you? Let me see your piece of paper. You did. Unbelievable.
Wow, number five. Interesting.
That's just the S in Stetson.
Yeah. The S stands for something else.
Oh, that's just the S, not number 5.
I make my S's look a lot like 5.
5s, yeah.
Right on.
Well, we should get into our top 5, and you have to, and let me just, Mr. Bass, hear me out here. A few years ago, we did a dark horse, and one of the two of us picked Skeet Reese as a dark horse, and got laughed out of the radio station studio because shush up. I felt like Skeet there was no chance in hell he could win. And I love Skeet. Let me just make sure I say that, because I don't need to catch grief from him too. I thought he didn't have a chance, but say that over again.
I'm losing you guys a little bit. Before we go further, are we picking 5 plus a dark horse, or 4 plus a dark horse, or what are we doing?
5 and a dark horse.
Okay,
Mr. Bass, because I feel like I've talked way too much, by the way, Brett. I'm sorry.
No.
I would like Mr. Bass to go first. And I would like to hear why these anglers are on your list too, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, this is kind of interesting because when I started trying to put my list together, I was thinking to myself that it probably would be one out deep, that it was going to be more of a post spawn bite out deep. And then the more I've seen is kind of intel pouring in this week, I've reversed my position on that and have decided I think it's going to be a shallow junk fishing sort of tournament, if you will. And so then I kind of re-scrambled here, and then I kind of was thinking, well, there's also a couple of people in here that could really do well either way, and there's and so that kind of influenced my decision as well. So with that being said, I think the first angler that I think really it's his tournament possibly to lose is Brandon Polinick. And there's several reasons for that, in my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. I'll just throw a couple out real quick and then kind of turn over to you, Ken. But
no. I just wanted to say, I was just raising my hand because he's on my list too.
He's on my list too.
Yeah. Since he's come back to the elites, man, what a domination. He's just such a dominating performance. And it's not like he wasn't a great stick before he left and came back. He was, and he knows how to win. And he's come so close at the Classic before. And I think now with the field of elite anglers, not that they're not great, incredible anglers, I think his odds have gone up exponentially since so many guys have gone over to Major League Fishing. Mm-hmm. And so, he's had a dominating performance ever since he's come back. I think he's very focused, very driven, really wants to capitalize on this opportunity. And I think he's going to do everything in his power to win it. And so I think he's my favorite.
I agree. Sorry.
I'm right there with you for many of the same reasons. He gets it that there is no second place in this tournament, that it's win or who cares. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be out there going for first place, and that's all he cares about.
And not a bad angler down in Texas either. Just saying.
It's true. And, quite frankly, I just love the guy. I was a marshal with him and got to ride in the boat with him one day up here at Table Rock Lake, and he's just such a great person. He's just everything about him, I think, is just top notch. I'd love to see him win, and so I am a big fanboy of his as well. But in any case, he's probably my first. Next, I've got John Cox.
Me too.
And at first, he wasn't even on my list when I was thinking about a deep water tournament, post spawn tournament. But man, this dude, he's unflappable, especially shallow water fishing. Now, one thing that you mentioned is with this high water, if the water's really super dirty, that does impact the Cinco bite, which slightly concerns me. But man, he's such a good stick. I think he can figure it out regardless.
Okay, so I have to jump in here. Please
do.
So John has done really well on Lake Fork. He's done well on Rayburn. He's done well at many places in Texas. And I believe he should be one of the favorites. There is some minor problems. He just got done fishing a Major League Fishing event, so John wasn't able to do, but I think a day and a half of practice. Because he only got to go to practice after Sunday because he fished that Major League Fishing event. And he didn't get to Texas till I think Monday or something like that. But if it's a shallow bite, John, that is in his wheelhouse. That is the way he likes to fish. I just like him as a individual, even though he's a little crazy some days. And but I think that he's I think he should be one of the favorites. Ken?
I certainly like John Cox as an angler. I'm certainly well aware of his skills in shallow water. I think if the water is dirty, that, like Mr. Bass was saying, that really hurts John Cox more so than most of the other shallow guys. For whatever reason, I didn't pick him in my top 5, but I would not be shocked if John Cox has a really good tournament.
Yeah. Okay, next, Mr. Bass.
All right. Next, I'm going to go with Matt Herron.
Won the TTBC, is that what they call it? TTBC,
Yeah,
several years ago.
Yeah, the Texas Bass Fest. 2016, I think, is when he won it on that lake. And, hey, let's face it, this is what he does. He is a shallow water fisherman. Flipping and pitching, that's him. I think this lake and these conditions really set up well for him. He's an experienced angler. He's been on the tour for a long time. I think he could pull it off.
Ken?
I like Matt Herron. I like Matt Herron as a person. I always enjoyed hanging out with Matt Herron.
Mm-hmm.
To Mr. Bass's point, he is a superior talent in shallow water, spinnerbaits, buzzbaits. He's going to be really strong. He did not make my list, but I'd love to see Matt Herron take this title. He'd be good for the game.
He's not on my list. Also, one of the most honest people to talk to that you can ever talk to. If it doesn't matter, he isn't worried about offending anyone. He tells you dead straight. He and I have had some hour conversations that after having the conversation, I've thought to myself, I have to delete what I just had because that will get him in so much trouble that I don't ever want it. And he doesn't. He told me, Steve, I don't care.
He's a very smart dude. He's a very smart guy.
Great angler. The problem I have, the only thing I have to say about Matt is when he's in Texas, other than when he won on Ray Roberts, his average finish is probably like 40th. So he didn't make my list, but I will tell you, Ken and I agree on one thing. We like to see whoever wins the Classic be a good ambassador for the sport because we've had some duds, 7-8 years ago. And having a good ambassador like Edwin Evers or Attifo, that people that actually talk to the media makes our lives better and easier. So Matt would be fantastic as an ambassador because he's going to shoot the shit straight. And that is lovely for us.
Right on. Okay, next up, I've got Brock Mosley.
What can you say about Brock Mosley other than having an absolutely ridiculous year? A ridiculous year.
Right now.
He's on fire. He, unfortunately, isn't on my list. That was going to be my dark horse.
Yeah, I would say he is kind of my dark horse. And maybe I should have put him in the dark horse spot, actually, because I've got a couple there.
No, that's what you guys both have Skeet Reese, remember?
He's Major League Fishing now.
He'd be a real dark horse this term.
I would take Van Dam as my dark horse.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, do you remember who you took as your dark horse that year?
Me? No,
yes.
But it wasn't. It was a dark horse.
It wasn't that much more of a dark horse than mine.
Oh, it was.
And of all things,
of a dark horse than Skeet.
Skeet had a horrible tournament. Do you remember that?
Yeah, because you picked him.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I mean that comes with the territory.
He's still complaining about that.
Yeah.
We interrupted Mr. Bass's pick. This is
sorry.
This is his dark horse, not a dark horse.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bass. I apologize.
Anyway, obviously Brock is what we would call a young angler on the tour. He hasn't been on the tour very long, but man, he's just had an incredible year. And the things he did, like out at Pickwick, I mean, it was just very, very impressive to watch. And I think he's got as good a chance really as anyone, especially with these conditions, the way this is setting up with the high water. So I feel comfortable putting him on the list. So that's that. Okay, that's what have I got? Have I done 3 so far?
3 or 4, I think.
Palnick, Cox, Mosley. Who else did you do?
Heron.
Yeah,
Heron.
So I've done 4. I've done 4. Yep. Okay, number 5, I'm gonna go with Seth Feider. And this one also could be my dark horse. When I thought it was deep, I absolutely thought, man, Feider's my guy. He was definitely in there, and I didn't take him off when we went to shallow because he has proven over time to become. He gets more and more versatile every year he fishes, and I think kind of the same sort of logic that. The competition has changed over the last few years, and I really think this might be his year to shine. I would like to see him do well on this tournament, and I think there's a chance anyway. And so he could be considered my dark horse as well, even though he's one of the better known guys on the tour at the moment.
You can't. Mr. Bass, this is.
I'm going to agree right now with him.
You can't pick the leader in the Angler of the Year race.
Exactly.
Call him your dark horse.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
I was going to say the exact same thing, Ken. I was going to say the exact same thing. Okay, now.
So that's my 5.
You have one more.
My 5. And then my official dark horse, Cody Bird.
Ah.
Okay, that's a dark horse.
That is a dark horse.
And it's because this is his home lake. I mean, this is where he lives like 40, 45 minutes away from this lake. From what I've heard, he's very familiar with it, fishes it a lot. And so he's my official formal dark horse, Cody Bird.
I think that's a great dark horse pick. It's better than my dark horse pick, as a matter of fact. So, but I'm not going to change my dark horse pick because that would not be fair to Mr. Bass.
You should know, while that's a very dark horse, Cody has not done well in any tournament in Texas. Like, horrible. 2014 in Rayburn, he finished 157th. 2012, he finished 98th. At Fort Loudon Tellico in 2010, he finished 112th. And then in 2007, he finished 145th. So, while local, he doesn't seem he must like other places other than Texas, but still a good dark horse.
Who knows? But I'm going with the local guy. Let's see what happens.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I like it. It's a 3-day tournament. It's against overall a relatively weak field. This is not as strong as an opens field.
This isn't as strong as open field.
This is somewhere where a guy like Cody Bird can put it together. You only got to be good for 3 days here, and Cody Bird can do it. I like his chances. I like that dark horse pick. It's better than mine.
Okay, who are your top 5 and dark horse? Kenneth Allen Duke.
Okay, we already talked Palnick, so he's out of the way. And we referenced Stetson Blaylock, and I'm leaving Stetson on the list for one reason, because I think the fishing could be challenging out there. And Stetson Blaylock puts 5 fish in the boat every single day. For a long, long time, Kevin Van Dam had the Bassmaster Elite threw out a limit to the scales, 57 straight competition days. Well, a couple of years ago, Blaylock broke that record. The record now stands at 65, and he owns it. So I really like the chances of a guy who knows how to put 5 in the boat in a tournament like this. So he's my pick after Palnick.
That's an impressive stat.
I think Blaylock is a great angler. I think he's a fantastic angler. I didn't think he did. My notes. My stupid printer like printed things back to forth, and it's got me all ass backwards now.
Now, Mr. Bass, after I tell you all my pick, I'll say comments. If it's just me and Steve, I usually say thoughts, if any.
He's done well at Lake Fork. He had a 9th and a 16th, and then in 2014 he had a 2nd on Lake Fork. So he's done well in Texas to start off with. Fishing, I mean, he's 25th in 36th in Angler of the Year points right now, which is kind of weird because I thought he'd done better than that. But it is the Classic.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff I'm throwing out the window.
I know. I know. Just like world ranking and that, I know you too well. I still think that's I think that's a good pick. He isn't on my list though. Mr. Bass, any thoughts?
Well, I think he's a fine pick. I mean, he is very, very consistent, as you said. I thought about him actually quite a bit because some other people that were making comments about him in the specific tournament really convinced me that this is his kind of lake where he should do very well. The reason I did not put him on my list, and I very well could have interchanged him with a couple at least of my picks here, is that, even though he's had quite an amazingly consistent career, he's only got one win.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I don't want to disparage the guy by any means. And obviously, like you said, this is a much smaller field. He's definitely got the talent. He's got the ability. It could happen for him. But that's really why I didn't make my list.
Okay.
A lot of that makes a lot of sense. My next pick is Clark Wendlandt. Come on, guys! Angler of the Year.
Yep.
Last year. He is. He's got an interesting stat coming into this season or coming into this Classic, and that is that he has the record now for longest gap between Classic appearances. He was last in the Classic in 2001.
I didn't know that.
Of course, he's got a billion FLW championship appearances, the Wood Cup. And Wendlandt's a Texan. Wendlandt is a guy who can put together 3 days. He's a little bit of a sentimental pick, but he's also a world-class angler. So he's my next guy on my list.
Clark Wendlandt is on my list. I felt that being local was important or somewhat local, has fished well in Texas. Last year was just ridiculous. I think that he hasn't started off on fire this year, but I think he knows the area and knows how to fish the area. And I don't think it matters if it's shallow or it's deep. I think Clark is one of those guys that can fish all water columns. And I have Clark as my number one.
Okay.
Interesting.
Now, my fourth guy on my list, and they're not really in too much of a particular order, is, I think, quite likely the best deep water angler in the field. And, we've been talking about the weather, we've been talking about the water conditions and so forth, and deep may be completely out of play. And if deep is completely out of play, that'll probably hurt this guy. And the water is not likely to be crystal clear, and that'll perhaps hurt this guy. But I'm leaving him on there because I think he's the best deep water guy in the field. And if there is a deep water bite, I think this guy can find it. And his name is Justin Kerr. He's out of Arizona, and few people have heard of him.
Yes.
But he won a U.S. Open a few years back. And he is a very, very talented deep water stick.
That's
interesting.
I would have thought that would have been one of your dark horses.
I thought you were I thought you were gonna everything. I was like, yeah, that's Patrick, and then what? So that was fun.
I think this guy's the best deep stick out there. I really do. Now, if suddenly you could throw Aaron Martins and a few other people out there, then you got a different conversation. But it's not that. So Justin Kerr is next on my list. My fifth guy, still not on the dark horse yet, is a guy who I think the conditions are playing to his skills. This is a guy who's pretty good at covering some water, but doing it in a very thorough way, largely with a flipping stick and a jig or a soft plastic bait or frog, and that's Kyle Welcher.
Yes.
I think Kyle Welcher could be a real player.
And a stud.
If it's one in 5 feet or less, I think Welcher is going to be right there. And if it's one somewhere else, maybe he's not. But he's on my list.
Kyle Welcher is arguably one of the most fun people I've interviewed in the last 2 years. He has a great story. He's a poker player, which I love. Ken and I talk poker all the time. Ken, I talk poker with him.
But Steve never invites me to his game.
Oh, well, we have. But you should know he made his living, or his first year on the elites was paid for from winnings on poker, and he has a great sense of the atmosphere and the media and the whole thing that surrounds the bass. And he flat out can catch shallow water fish. He caught him up in Palatka and just spooked everybody. And just everyone was like, "Holy cow, this guy can throw a frog."
He's strong, shallow, and he gets it. He's another one of those guys who understands that this is his first classic.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of guys. I used to go to the classic media day when I was working for Bass, and I'd quite often ask one question of everybody, and it would be, especially the guys who were there, and it was their first time there. I'd say, "What's a good classic for you? Where do you have to be to have a good classic?" And you get a range of answers. You'd get guys who would say, "Oh, I'm just happy to be here." Well, you cross them off your list immediately.
All right.
Happy to be there is not going to win anything.
Right.
Then you get the guys who, well, I'd really like to make the cut and fish on Saturday or fish on Sunday. You cross those guys off also.
Mm-hmm.
The last classic rookie who told me, "I'm here to win. There is only first place," was Boyd Duckett in 2007. And of course he won. He was the last rookie who told me he was there to win.
How many rookies have won?
Like 8.
Okay.
Rookies win quite often.
Yeah.
But not in a long time actually, but there was a time when rookies won quite often. It's more likely there are 15 rookies in this field, which is not an unusually high number, by the way, because you got your Bass Nation guys, you got so many defections to MLF and so forth that there are 15 rookies out there. But I think Welcher is probably the most dangerous one.
Mm-hmm. A good dude too. He's a good dude. That would be a good one to win, just for, Bass Ambassador. That would be a good one.
Okay.
You can agree with me. We've had some duds that won the classic and don't help remotely the sport at all.
Well, most guys probably don't help the sport particularly, but as long as they don't impede it, I guess we're okay. There's a couple names we haven't mentioned that I think are interesting that we haven't mentioned them, but I'm going to get to my dark horse here.
Okay.
Quick, if you don't mind. And that's a guy who would perhaps liven things up more than anybody else in the field. And that's Matthew Robertson.
Yes. On fire.
Yeah, on him.
On him.
I
That's
wish
right.
he had a booth at the
Hold on.
He had a booth at the expo. I would buy an on him cap because I think that's the coolest cap out there.
That is a cool cap.
That guy can catch him. You got it. Awesome.
Hold on.
I can catch him. The guy's an interesting story. The guy comes from nothing, and I think he'd be a great, an interesting ambassador for the game.
This is one of his hats.
And is it really?
Yeah. He sent this to me.
His cap, that's cool. I thought his caps all said on him.
They say on him or on fire. And this one says on fire.
O-N.
On fire.
And a big
on E-M.
They do, but he has on fire too. He sent this to me.
No, I think you talked to the wrong Matt Roberts.
Well, whoever autographed the inside of it to give away just screwed me out of $20.
I think you talked to somebody from Duck Dynasty.
Yeah, Matt Robinson. Yeah,
but it'd be very interesting if Matt Robertson won the Bassmaster Classic. You know, here's a guy who's a good guy. I like this guy. He's an interesting story, but he won the Classic last year. None of us mentioned Hank Cherry, or unless Steve's going to mention him.
No, I'm not mentioning Hank Cherry.
But Hank's a terrific angler. I'll tell you a guy who'd be good for the sport would be David Mullins.
Oh yeah,
David. Maybe the funniest guy in the field.
Yes.
Not maybe. He's the funniest guy in the field.
I agree with you on that. Everyone likes G-Man though.
G-Man's not in the field.
I know. Maybe next year if he's lucky.
Yeah, I would expect him to always be in the Classic. He's certainly one of the better anglers in the entire Elite Series. Swindle is hands down one of the top 10 sticks out there. That doesn't mean the results always show it, but I believe he is that good.
What were you going to say before you gave our dark horse that we haven't talked about?
Oh, well, we haven't mentioned Hank Cherry, who's coming off the Classic win. We haven't mentioned some of the other guys like Bill Lowen, who is the most experienced angler in the Classic field. This is his, I think, his 11th Classic. We haven't talked about some of those guys who, you would think we'd be talking about a little bit because of who they are and what they've done, but they've kind of gone by the wayside. Unless Steve, you're gonna mention a couple of those guys.
Those guys I'm not. I'd like to mention there's been a whole bunch of people that have said, like Booster said, Kennedy, Palaniuk, Micah Frazier, Cody Bird, and John Cox were his pick. Let me put that up. Jim Richards said Clark Winlet, Cobb, Welcher, Watley, and Carson were his. Keith Carson. The problem with Keith, though, is Keith didn't get to make the practice days either because of MLF. Matthew said Chris Zaldane, Taco Ito, Taki Ito, however you say his name. Scott Canterbury, we haven't mentioned him at all. Brandon Palaniuk.
Yeah.
And he said he didn't have a 5. That was he only did a top 4. Oh no, Brandon Cobb was his last one. So there's been a lot of people just saying these are everyone's got an opinion and who they think is going to win it. If you want to hear my 5 have been on some of mine have been on yours. Clark Winlet was, write this down by the way, because our bet is on this. Write these down.
Okay, I'm writing them down.
Clark Winlet. I love Clark Winlet. I think he's just good. I had John Cox, only because I think it's going to be a shallow bite. I think he'll do all right, but I don't know how much not having any practice days is going to help or hurt him. But he kind of flies on the seat of his pants anyway, or however that saying goes. Brandon Palaniuk. Now here's the ones that I have different than you guys. I think he's going to do well, and he's been.
Pete Reeves.
Yeah, I have Steve Kennedy down as my 4th angler. I think he's got a lot of.
Remind me to tell a Steve Kennedy story when you're finished.
Still tell it now. Let's tell it. I love to hear a Steve Kennedy story.
All right, so this would have been in the 2008, 9, something like that, 10, and I'm hanging out with Steve in the boatyard at the end of one of the competition days of the Classic, and he's not done well. And he's saying to me, I'm not even asking him questions. We're just hanging out, talking a little bit, and he says, "I am never going to win one of these." And I said, "Why do you say that?" I said, "You're plenty good enough to win." Takes me all out of my game. I'm sorry. Let me do my Steve Kennedy impersonation. No, this just takes me all out of my game. I don't know. And so Steve told me he was never going to win. Now, I don't necessarily believe that, but that's straight from the horse's mouth. So good to know you picked him.
Yeah. Now it makes me think.
I love Steve Kennedy. Steve and Julia Kennedy are two of the finest people you'll ever meet.
Oh, I had the best time with him in Palatka 2 years ago. He had a great day too. He and I are talking, and he says to me, you only talk to me when I do well. I said, I got so many other people I have to see. I'm happy you did well, but he was busting my chops. He's like, "Oh, I'm just giving you grief, Steve."
Great guy, and
Oh,
he's
yeah.
I really considered him very strongly, because he's a guy who I think Mr. Bass could be really strong in one of these kind of in between tournaments where maybe there's a deep water crankbait bite that's not super deep, but away from the bank a little bit. That's kind of his game. He throws a lot of baits that haven't been made in 30 years.
Yeah, a lot of old stuff.
Yeah. Well, he's had a really strong tournament at Pickwick as well.
Great angler. My last one, and this one is kind of a sentimental because I was going to take Bill Lowen because I love Bill Lowen, but I switched and went with Brad Watley because he's a Texas boy. Hasn't had a really good year. He's also Castaway boy and a band of anglers boy. So it's kind of like I'd really like to see him do well, and because of relationships that I have with Castaway and a band of anglers, and that's the only reason why he's on the list.
I like it. I don't have a comment on Watley. Mr. Bass will no doubt offer something cogent and to the point, but I got nothing on Watley. I didn't really put him in the.
Well, I kind of listened to that, and then I went on to a different thought. Actually, my thought was, if we knew that it really is going to be a deep bite, what would change with your list? If you really knew it was going to be deep, who would you add to your list? I got several here that I would kind of swap out, if you will. I'd like to hear yours.
I'd definitely be looking at Fighter a lot stronger.
Walters.
I'd be putting Steve Kennedy on the list, even though Steve personally told me he would never win one.
Oh, is that your wife?
Nope, that's Brian Carpenter from Ike Live.
Oh, yeah.
And, University. My list would change quite significantly.
Who would you add, Mr. Bass?
My first on my list is Patrick Walters.
Yeah, Patrick Walters is. It's really hard to not put Patrick Walters on this list because he's just that good of an angler. So
yeah.
It's one of those guys that you're like, man, this, and I can't put him as a dark horse by any means because he's just been fantastic the last couple of years. Patrick Walters is a really, really, really good angler. Brandon Lester too always seems to do fairly well in the classics, but how will he do this year? I don't know. I guess we'll find out on Friday. Brandon Lester is another good angler.
Chris Zaldain was another one.
I think Chris Zaldain is going to be the favorite. Is going to be Bass's golden child again on Friday. I'm sure he'll have a camera on him. I will say one thing about Chris is watching him live on the Elites is fabulous. It's
entertaining.
Yeah, he just talks and talks and talks through everything that he's doing, and that's wonderful for the live coverage. So I like that too.
Yep, for sure. And then I also had Corey Johnston.
Oh yeah, another good angler.
The Canadian brothers, actually, they're both they're both in the tournament. And I think either one of those actually could do quite well on the deep bite, and they might even surprise you on the shallow bite. To tell you the truth, they actually. I think they.
Yeah, both are good. Can you see that question? Scott Easiel asked, "What baits do you think will be? What bait he thinks the Classic will be won on, please?"
Scotty Zell, that was exactly the question I was going to go around on media day tomorrow and ask guys. I said, what bait type is going to win? Is it going to be a crankbait, a lipless crankbait, a spinnerbait, a buzzbait? I have
Chatterbait.
no idea, man. But the more, and I haven't seen the water, and I haven't talked to any of these guys, but if the water's up high like that, and if the water's dirty, I got to put a spinnerbait more in play. I got to put a buzzbait in play. I got to put a flipping jig in play. And I got to put a square bill in play. And if I had to pick, it'd probably be one of those, but I really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
How about y'all? What do y'all think, Steve, Mr. Bass?
I think that if it's really dirty, I think chatterbait's going to be something that is used really, really well. I thought I saw our best friend, who we talked about just recently, Brandon Card, caught one on a chatterbait the other day. And I'm very surprised he isn't in your top 5.
Well, the reason he's not is because that fish he caught on the chatterbait, I believe, is his first bass ever. So, no, I'm just giving Brandon a hard time. No, that was a joke.
That was a
Brandon.
joke. Let's make sure we know that everyone knows that's a joke.
That was a joke.
Yes.
I owe Brandon because Brandon took a brand new prized flipping stick I had and handed it to Boudreaux. And it took me years before I caught another fish on that rod.
Oh, you did catch a fish on that Fitzgerald rod?
I did.
How long did the curse last?
So-
Just out of curiosity.
Lasted 5 years. I basically had to retire that flipping stick and put.
I told Mr. Bass that story before we went live, just so you know.
Yeah, he did actually.
Mr. Bassett was Brandon Card who gave that rod to Boudreaux, and Boudreaux cursed it for a long, long time. So, Brandon, all the mean things I say about you are because of that.
Yeah. A lot of people are saying chatterbait, swimbait, crankbait, and jig are what they think are going to be used.
I'd love to see a buzzbait win the Classic, and I'd love to see Todd Auten win the Classic throwing a buzzbait. Because that's the guy who was the first to put a frog on a buzzbait, you know?
Yeah, dude, that guy, that guy's a good dude.
He's a great guy. Great guy. Very talented angler. Been around forever. He'd be a great story. He'd be a nice ambassador for the sport. And, I can see him picking up a buzzbait with a frog on it because he and Swindle and a lot of these other guys, they don't throw buzzbaits with skirts anymore at all, ever.
Right.
And just go down the bank, skipping boat docks and just throwing it whatever's in front of them.
Yeah. Well, we only have
a cool way to run a tournament.
That would be a cool way. We only have a few minutes before we end this, but I just want to say thank you, Ken.
Oh my gosh, thank you guys for having me. I'm sorry I was late getting into town here, and
we can do this again, right?
Yeah, only if you ask me and send me the link.
Yeah, I'm always.
I really enjoyed having you on, Ken. And you're just you want to talk about a great ambassador for the sport.
Yes,
I mean you definitely fit that bill.
I actually think that
Mr. Bass, thank you.
I actually think you should be in the Hall of Fame of fishing, bass fishing. By the way, I mentioned this to someone recently, and they agreed with me that all the articles you've written for bass and for anglers alone, that you have done, you've introduced bass fishing to hundreds of thousands of people, and you should you should have that.
Question.
You and my wife agree I should be.
I mean, it was your wife I was talking to.
But, I am the biggest detractor in the world about the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame.
I know.
The biggest detractor. They're a joke.
I know.
They're incapable of honoring anyone because they are a joke. They're a dumpster fire and clown makeup is what they are.
I know.
And you know what? I don't warrant that kind of consideration anyway.
You're in my Hall of Fame.
Mine too, for sure.
I would like to be put into the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame so I can say no thanks.
He is the Howard Stern of Hall of Fame inductees, because Howard will never be in the Radio Hall of Fame either.
Well, there's a guy
Well,
who
I
should
know,
be
I know
in the
for years,
Media Hall of Fame.
I know for years I have just really eaten up so many of your articles. They've just been incredibly helpful for me, and just so informative, so helpful. And man, all you got to do is go to the BASSY website, type your name in, and there is page after page after page after page after page after page after page of articles, and they're awesome. They're just great.
Mr. Bass, they took my name off most of the articles I
Yes.
wrote for him.
And to be honest, there's a lot more that you don't realize that he's written for other people.
Well, yeah, there's some of that, but there's a lot of articles on there that I wrote. They just took my name off when I left and stuff. But that's okay. That's okay. That's what happens when you leave a company. That's to be expected.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I had a nice run at Bass. I mostly had a great time there. I met a lot of great people, and had a better offer, had a better opportunity, and I'm thrilled to be with Fishing Tackle Retailer now.
Yes.
And I still write about bass. I'm sorry to go on and on.
Maybe you could share with us a little bit about what you do there because I think
FTR.
There's probably a lot of people in our audience who don't know.
There are probably very few people in the audience know, because it's a business-to-business publication that is mostly read by tackle retailers and industry people, and Steve Chapman.
I read it every month.
Not a retailer, but he's an industry person. And it's a B2B publication telling retailers, how perhaps they can improve their business, telling them about new gear that's coming out and things like that. So I've stayed in the industry through FTR, but also I do a lot of freelancing. As a matter of fact, I've got articles in every one of the MLF bass fishing magazines, and I've got 2 articles in this most recent issue of Bassmaster. So I'm still out there. I'm still alive and kicking, and I love that you guys gave me a chance to be on your show. I probably do 80 YouTube shows or podcasts a year, something like that.
He's on.
You make the show better. I mean, there's no question about it.
I tell him that all the time.
Well, Mr. Bass, you're awfully kind. What it really is, if you must know, is that I never have anything to do. So when people ask me, "Hey, can you come on in 15 minutes?" I say, "Sure."
No, you're a good dude, man. You're one of the best dudes in the industry. I cherish our friendship more than anything. I tell you this all the damn time. I
cherish the Steve Chapman friendship more than you could possibly realize.
I enjoy just
at the Ritz or
at the Ritz.
Or whatever.
Did we catch any fish at the Ritz?
Yeah, we caught fish at the Ritz.
Did I not fish that day?
You wouldn't fish. You wanted me to have the first shot at it.
Yeah.
So that was a poor choice on your part.
Yeah. You want to know what's it's like the snake lures. Every year do we not get one for each other?
Yes, we do. We go to the the FATC, Florida Antique Tackle Collectors Show, and you've broadcast from there a couple of times, and I hope you'll do that again.
Yes.
Because it's a great thing. Mr. Bass, we got to get you out there. That's an annual event, Daytona Beach, that wasn't held this year because of the virus, but it'll be back next late February, early March. It is the second biggest antique tackle show in the country, and
it's ridiculous.
Fantastic.
He showed me those snakes, and those are amazing.
Yeah, a guy named Scott Morgan makes those, and they're real snake skin. And I'm terrified of snakes. If you ever want to hear me scream like an 8-year-old girl, get a snake within 100 yards of me. But I'm fascinated by those lures that he makes with real snake skin, and they're very cool.
Yeah, and really, you go to that Florida Antique Trade Show, and you would be dumbfounded by the amount of money that is paid for large, old, musky, beat the hell out of lures. I saw 3 lures. I think did he want them? If I'm wrong, just tell me. Didn't he want that one guy want $650,000 for those 3 lures in that one case?
That might be the case. The most valuable lure out there, I believe this is generally true, is the Haskell minnow, the giant Haskell minnow, which is a trolling lure, a metal trolling lure about 10 inches long, is the lure that sold for the most money. It was made by a gun maker in Kentucky in the 19th century, and it sold for $101,000 something dollars.
Yeah.
Wow.
But Mr. Bass, it is no big deal to go to the Florida Antique Tackle Collector Show and look at a display case that might be worth $300,000 just with different baits in it and some original boxes and some of the original paperwork and so forth. And what I love about it is just walking around that floor and talking to those guys. They are so passionate about it, and they also they're so knowledgeable. They're crazy knowledgeable about it. So it's an education. And I dragged Steve there 4 or 5 years ago, and now he won't miss it.
Yeah. And really, the craziest thing about it, that show is none of those guys fit other than Bernie. Let me just make sure we say that. Bernie Schultz is there. He's an elite angler. Most of those guys don't fish at all.
There are a few guys there who don't really
passionate
fish.
about antique lures, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bernie's one of the most knowledgeable and respected guys in the world of antique lures, and he's eating up with it, and that's a show that he loves. And but we got to get you out there, Mr. Bass, and if you'll go with us, I will take you guys out for the finest onion rings ever made on the planet.
Oh man,
I'm not an onion rings guy.
That's the deal.
Oh, I'm onion rings.
But these onion rings.
Look at this body. You think I've missed an onion ring in my life?
I'm just going to tell you what
I definitely will not turn an onion ring down.
The batter on these onion rings, it's at the Daytona Tap Room in Daytona Beach, Florida, walking distance from where the show is. And a bunch of us will leave the show in the middle of the day and go have lunch there. Good burgers, best onion rings on the planet. They're, as soon as I tell you this secret, you'll get it and you'll want to go. They're made with cake batter.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So nice and sweet.
I had you at cake batter.
Yes.
Right on.
Well,
You gotta
again,
come with us, Mr. Bass.
you have to. He might come down for iCast. So if I can get him down here for iCast, we'll
absolutely
we'll hang out. I know this is we're past our time limit here, but are you going to TTI Blakemore dinner or not?
I think I have a conflict. I'm not sure.
Are you going to go to Mike's?
The irony, I haven't been invited.
They haven't sent the invitation. We already talked about you.
Okay. The irony about the TTI Blakemore dinner is it is usually the same evening that my company is having a dinner in the same restaurant in the adjacent private room.
Oh, okay. Are you going to go to Mike's whiteout party?
I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Yeah,
Mr. Bass, I am so far out of the loop. I was only recently made aware that there is a loop. That's how far out of it I am.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, everyone, make sure you go to Mr. Bass's channel, subscribe, like, click that notification button, thumbs up, the whole 9 yards. I'll upload this tonight, and then he'll put this on his channel. Everyone go to FTR Fishing Tackle Retail if you want to know. If you want to know everything that's going on in the industry, lure-wise, all sorts of promotional stuff, fishingtackleretailer.com is a fantastic spot to check out stuff. And to be honest, I go to Fishing Tackle Retailer at least twice a day to read articles. I know that sounds crazy. And I also get the magazine even though it says this is the last magazine you're ever going to get for the last 3 months. And when it doesn't come in, I'm going to be calling somebody I know to complain. So just be on the...
Just fill out the form. It's free.
It didn't say to fill it out. I have it here.
Well, you got to go online and subscribe.
Okay. Anyway, go to fishingtackleretailer.com. Ken, thank you very much for the time. Have fun
thank you both so much.
Have fun in Fort Worth.
Great show.
And I guess we'll talk to each other probably this week because I have some questions. I think
afternoon to brag about my pick versus his.
Yes. Yeah, that's what we'll end up calling each other about that at some point. So everyone, thank you for watching. every next Wednesday will be on the Mr. Bass channel, so make sure you go over there. And from Ken, Mr. Bass, and I, make sure you take a kid fishing, get your fish on. There it is, the point. And we will see you guys soon. Cheers, guys. Hey, stay on. Hold on.
See ya.